You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, no, don't give up.
Welcome to the show, Jarrod. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, happy to be here. We're going to have a great conversation.
By the way, I took a look at your website. I suggest everyone pop over there and check out his website. This guy's busy.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, one of the things we do on the show is we like to have you share your story of hope. And I know you had two incredible ones, so I'm going to stop talking and let you get right into it.
First story I would like to share is about performance anxiety, stage fright. And while I'm sharing the story, I would just ask that you think of a similar block in your own life, the kind of obstacle that you've tried everything you know to do to break through it, trouble with relationship, maybe don't have enough time, don't have enough money, whatever it is. Because when you're in that situation, it does feel like, well, maybe this is all that life has for me. There's a sense of being resigned. Maybe this is as good as it gets. I was in music. I was full-time. I was a professional musician, principal viola with the South Carolina Philharmonic. And growing up in music, I had terrible stage fright. It didn't matter how much I practiced, how much I prepared. In the moment that mattered, like the only moment that mattered, my brain was just frozen. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. My hands were foreign to me. Nothing worked right. I certainly did not play well, and I felt terrible. And after every one of those experiences, like whether it was an audition or a recital, a concert, a solo, whatever, I wanted to sell my instrument and just get out. And that's kind of weird because music is this like mental illness where you can't not do it. And yet at the same time, in the moment that it came to share it, I just was miserable. And I don't know if you can relate to that, whether it's a relationship situation that just seems hopelessly irreconcilable, or a finance or issue with your schedule. But that's where I was. And I was there for like 20 years. And when you're in a situation like that, people come by with what I would call motherly advice. It's well-meaning. It makes sense. It seems like it should work. It really does. But it doesn't actually work. And in the case of like stage fright or performance anxiety, they say things like, oh, well, you just need to be really prepared. Be sure that you're overly prepared and the music is easy to play. Or they say, eat a banana before you go on stage because the potassium in the banana helps your brain to calm the nerves. Or they say, learn how to meditate, or be sure to breathe, or just do your best. Oh, that's my favorite bad advice. Just do your best. Just give it your best. That's all you can do in this situation. Imagine the audience in your whatever it is, it doesn't work. It actually makes the situation worse. Well, here's what works. Now, up until this point, when I wasn't busy playing music, I was teaching the musical secrets. I had the musical secrets of leadership, or the musical secrets of productivity, the musical secrets of persuasion. And I would go and train people how to access different parts of their brain on demand, and show them how this process that your brain takes sound, music or language, and turns it into emotion. Show them what's going on and how we can use this in our lives. And I was on stage at the symphony, and I had been failing miserably with stage fright for years. And my solo's coming up, and I'm getting ready for it, and I can hear the orchestra playing away in the background. And all that anxiety cycle is just kicking off. Here we go again. But it dawned on me this time, what if I just practiced what I preached? Like, what if I took those same principles of music and translated them not for business performance, not for profitability or productivity, but for power and clarity under pressure? It's like, well, here we go. Now, I'm going to break down what happened, and I had about 30 seconds to do this. And this was the first time I had ever tried it. And this is like late in my career. So the only reason you're having the problems you do in your life, don't have enough time, don't have enough money, relationships not working, whatever it is, health, whatever. The only reason you're having those problems is because you aren't up to something bigger in life. Like essentially, you don't have a bigger problem. And I know that sounds cold and hard and being insensitive. My friends that want to lose weight, they start a diet and stop a diet. My friends that want to quit smoking, they start and stop. My friends who are horribly out of shape and one day decide they want to ride and finish a triathlon. What do you know? They don't struggle with their weight or health ever again because they're up to something bigger. Like they're distracted by this big challenge called, how am I going to stay alive for 120 miles completing this triathlon? And being up to something bigger taps into a greater level of resourcefulness. So here I am in music and I'm sitting on a stage, and the principle is the only reason you're struggling with that is because you aren't struggling with something bigger. I was struggling with stage fright. And the principle is the only reason I was struggling with stage fright is because I wasn't struggling with something bigger. So in that moment, I decided to take on something bigger. And I look at the music and I say to myself, what is this about? Like, why do I want to share this with the audience? Why do I care? Now, I can't tell you why, but for some reason, that passage of music spoke to me the felt experience of being loved. And so I decided for no reason that I was going to stand for what was possible in my audience's life, that my audience would have the felt experience of being loved. So my solo starts. Now I'm doing something I've never done before. And so my brain network fires off what it had already fired off. It said, oh, you might miss this note. And I had to say in the moment, that's okay. I don't care. I am no longer about the business of getting all the notes right. I am not about the business of trying to play my best, trying to look good, trying to do this perfectly. I am no longer in that business. I am about the business of what is possible in my audience's life. I am here to stand for the possibility that they would have the felt experience of being loved. And I'd play that note, and then the next note would come up, and my brain would say, this one might be a little out of tune. And I would have to recommit myself to what was possible in my audience's life. And then the next note would come, and I'd have to recommit myself again. And note after note, I had to keep recommitting myself. It was kind of exhausting. I had never done this before. After that solo, I had, in fact, played better under pressure than I had ever played before. So what? The real victory was, for the first time, I couldn't wait to do it again. Every other time, I wanted to sell my instrument because it was so miserable. This time, I actually wanted to do it again. So the principle, the only reason you're having that trouble, the only reason you keep struggling with that is because you haven't taken on something bigger to struggle with. Let's say it's your relationship with your teenager. The only reason that relationship is in the crapper is because you aren't up to something bigger. Now, I understand that sounds horribly cold and insensitive, but imagine for a minute that you hop on Facebook and you announce to the world that your new book on success with teenagers is coming out in February, and you go to work writing a book. Well, now you aren't trying to solve the problem for your teenager. You're trying to solve the problem for every other parent across the country who's having the same problem. This allows you to access a different part of your brain. You're up to something bigger. And it allows you to have the answer flow through you. Being up to something bigger has this weird way of making all our current problems smaller. But in my life, it allowed me to enjoy playing music under pressure again.
Wow. I got to tell you, I work with a lot of professional musicians. I coach them, and they all have similar stories and haven't figured out that key point. So I will be directing them your way. So I know you said you had a second story. Do you want to tell us a second story? Because I think that's going to lead into the things I want to talk to you about today.
Yes, second story. So the first story, my intention is, even though it seems impossible and you have tried everything there is, the answer is frequently simple and quick, and it changes everything. The problem is the answer at first doesn't make sense. Why should I write the book on success with teenagers when I don't have it figured out? Because you're not writing the book because you have it figured out. You're writing the book to figure it out. When I was working, and this is also back to the music days, I was working as a freelance musician. And I would teach lessons and play weddings and playing the symphony and all the stuff that freelance musicians do. And if you know any artist in your life, you understand why they're called starving artists, because that industry just isn't set up for you to make any money doing it. And I got tired of that. I was tired of working all the hours of the week and making about $50,000 a year. And no, that just wasn't going to do it for me. And I had tried trading my horse for another one. So I would leave music and go into something else, and then I'd come back to music. Then I'd leave it again and go into something else and come back to music. And eventually I had to realize maybe it's not music. Maybe it's me. So again, back to how about I just practice what I preach? How do I apply the principles at that time that I was training other people to apply? And the first one is, if it requires more of the same, you're going to get more of the same. If your solution is work harder, you're going to end up with what you already have, just more of it. So there I was, and I was in a situation where if I needed to make more money, I had to teach more lessons, or I had to play more weddings, or play more symphonies. Well, that didn't work because it's just more of the same, and there's a finite limit on what I can do there. So here's what I did, and I believe anybody can do this. Whether you are a coffee shop owner or a dentist or a car mechanic, anybody can do this. These three changes, because they took me to $100,000 a year on 20 hours a week. The first change was teach what you know, but take your time out of that equation. See, I was teaching lessons one-on-one. Well, there's a hard limit on who I can reach doing that. I took my time out of the equations and started teaching lessons one-on-many. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do that. You can do group lessons. You can write a book. You can create a manual. You can provide the instruction course for other courses to do. You can do a YouTube. You can have a tutorial series. You can have a Udemy series. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can take your time out of the equation and teach one-on-many. The model I chose was the medical doctor model, where the patients are in the rooms in the hallway and the doctor just pops in as he's needed. See, the doctor isn't needed to check you in or check you out or schedule you or reschedule you or answer basic questions or weigh you or show you how to take the medicine or answer. Doctor's not needed for that. And this allows them to reach more people. Well, as a music teacher, I'm not needed while you're unpacking your instrument, while you're tuning up, while you're warming up, while you're practicing the exercise that I'm not needed for that. I could be serving somebody else during that time. So I would just bounce back and forth between the rooms. This took my time out of the equation. This doubled my income without working more hours or charging more per student. Now, the good news is my students loved it. The parents loved it. Heck, they were ecstatic. And here's why. When you're learning something for the first time, it's nearly impossible to do with somebody breathing down your neck. My students had the luxury of being able to learn without somebody standing over them. I could say, okay, here's how you do it. Let's practice a few times together. All right, I'm going to leave the room. You're going to practice this on your own. I'm going to come back in about 10 minutes and check on you, all right? So they had a chance to sound miserable and work out the kinks and not have to be embarrassed about it. Parents loved it. Students loved it. Man, everybody was thrilled. Now, whether you are a barista or a coffee shop owner or a dentist or a car mechanic, I guarantee there is somebody that can learn from what you know. So how can you teach them, but take your time out of that equation? Whether you write an article or put up a YouTube video or teach a group of people, how can you teach without your time? That's the first thing I changed. The second thing I changed is your students know, like, and trust you. And now they need equipment. So where can they get that equipment? You see, before this change, they would come to me and they would say, hey, we've got a bunch of money burning a hole in our pocket. What should we do with it? And I would say, oh, gosh, don't give me your extra money. Take it down to the music store. Give it to the music store. Well, that's craziness. Stop that right away. It will take you about 15 minutes to go down to your city hall and get a retail license. You take that retail license and you call up the music distributors or coffee distributors or dentist distributors or car mechanic tool distributors, and you say, hey, I'd like to carry your product. And they say, great, just let us know when you need some, we'll send it your way. So now my students would come to me and they say, well, hey, how do we get one of these? I'll have one here for you next week. I didn't have to pay any money up front. I didn't have to wholesale or warehouse or any of that. They would just come in next week and I got the money for it. That added 50% to my bottom line just like that, without any extra time or any extra work, because it all happened during that office visit, if you will, with the student. So as you're training people on how to run coffee shops your way, or how to run a car mechanic shop or a dentist office your way, they're going to need equipment. How can they buy that equipment through you? How can you be the one to make that introduction? They already know, like, and trust you. The third change I made is, in order to make more money performing, I had to play more gigs. But if you take your time out of that equation, it's no longer limited. So instead of playing more gigs, I started booking for other musicians. Now there's no limit on the number of gigs I can provide for other musicians. This tripled my performing income. Now, if you are teaching people how to run better coffee shops or car mechanic shops or dentist shops, your students are coming up, they're coming up, they're coming up. How can we provide them with opportunities? Because that takes your time out of the equation. And the way you do that is you send them to the next seminar. So they teach for you. They get paid, they get to grow, you make more money, and your time isn't involved in that. Those three changes I believe anybody can make. They took me from floundering at $50,000 a year to over 100, working 20 hours a week. That is my second story of hope.
Wow, that's a good one. You know, I want to start asking you some questions about, I see your book behind you, The Thinking Power of, or Patterns of Success. What are some of those key patterns that people could start integrating right now into their business and changing that mindset and moving? One of the things I saw that you wrote is, why do you claim that being focused on getting things done kills your productivity and checking things off your list lowers your income? Because that to me is like completely opposite of what all of us think.
Yes, checking things off your to-do list lowers your income. Being focused on getting things done destroys your productivity. Absolutely. Here's what I mean by mindset. The difference between mindset and personality or attitude. So people say, oh, you have to have a positive mindset. No. They mean you have to have an optimistic personality. Mindset is a strategic way of thinking that produces a measurable result. It is a way of thinking, a pattern that anybody can duplicate. That's what mindset is. So let's talk about productivity and profitability here. Profitability. Checking things off your to-do list lowers your income. Here's why. The way of thinking says the more I do, the more I get done. The more action I take, the more results I get. The more I do, the more I get paid for. That's the way of thinking. So it makes sense that checking things off your to-do list is going to get you more money, but it doesn't. Here's why. If you look at your to-do list, I guarantee you that 9 out of 10 things on that list could be delegated for $10 or $15 an hour, provided it was a simple system for somebody to follow and it was the right person following it. So the more you are checking things off your to-do list, the more excited you are about paying yourself the lowest amount possible during that block of time. And that's just a bad strategy you can't solve with stubbornness. So instead of getting happy about checking something off your list, oh, I returned these emails, oh, I rescheduled that, oh, I put that contract in the mail, oh, I followed up with this person. Instead of getting excited about that, you need to be depressed. Oh my gosh, I spent another hour of my life doing $10 an hour work. Oh my God, I feel so guilty because I took $10 out of that teenager's pocket down the road. I took $10 out of that virtual assistant in Thailand's pocket because I was too lazy to document the process and train them on how to do it for me. That's why it lowers your income. It's a distraction. Now, the second thing is being focused on getting things done destroys your productivity. Boy, howdy, I get a lot of grief for this one. People love making to-do lists and checking things off, and they feel like they're productive and they feel like they're getting... No, you're not. Here's why. whenever you're doing a task, it doesn't matter how good you are at it or how fast you can get it done. During the block of time you spend doing that task, there's like 27 other things that aren't getting done. This is a bad strategy that we can't solve with stubbornness. And as soon as you do that task and move on to the next task, it doesn't answer the bigger reason that the task needed to be done to start with, and that you were the one that needed to do it. This is a system level problem. So you get dopamine for checking the thing off your list. Man, you can feel great. Oh, look at what I did today. Oh, wow, look at me. I checked something. You feel great. But the problem is you were the one doing it. So tomorrow you're going to be the one doing it again. It didn't move the ball forward. Now, instead, how about don't do the work? Take a minute to document the process, write it down, whittle it down to the simplest 3 bullet points that even a monkey couldn't mess up. I'm talking about that placard on the cheeseburger station at McDonald's. It's like 4 pictures. This is how you assemble a frozen cheeseburger and thaw it out and get it wrapped up for the customer. I mean, it is so simple looking at those 4 pictures that a monkey couldn't screw it up. That kind of system. Now, it does take some brain work because you got to test some ideas, and some ideas aren't going to work and you're going to screw up some stuff. And then you got to train somebody. Okay, this is how you do it. Oh, don't do that. And when it breaks, you got to fight the urge to jump in and save it. Oh, well, you know what? It's just faster for me to do it. I can do it quicker. I can do it better. That's true. You can, but it's also the lowest paying thing you need to do. So hands off, buddy. You got to go back to, well, let me fix the system. Maybe my system was wrong. You got to go back to, well, let me train him. Maybe I didn't train him the right way. And while you're doing that, you don't get that dopamine rush of checking something off your to-do list. However, this is what you get instead. You get to never have to do that task again. That, my friend, moves the ball forward. And now you can spend more time on the higher paying activities that bring you more fulfillment and a greater degree of purpose.
So that is the best advice that we're going to have on this show. I know, hands down, all year, because I went to a 7-figure business staying in my zone of genius. And my zone of genius is what I love and what brings in the money. And so I don't want to learn how to edit my website. And I don't want to learn how to automate an email series. Like, that is just not fun for me. I'd rather pay another genius
yes.
to get that work done for me. And you're right. That is a difference. If you're struggling to hit that 6 and 7 figure, that is a difference of you going there or staying where you're at.
Yes. And a little bit of sympathy, because I can hear people saying, I would love to do that, but I don't have the money to hire them. I just don't have enough money to hire somebody. That's the trap. Being busy checking off $10 an hour tasks is the reason you don't have the money to outsource $10 an hour tasks. Now, here's how you get out of that trap. Start your day with the highest paying activity you have. This doesn't mean you have to do it all day. It just means you start your day with it. You do it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Fine. That is fine. We're just starting our day with that. If you will do that, it won't be very many days before you can start to outsource some of those small tasks. The second thing you can do is you've got $20. I guarantee you've got $20. Put $20 together, hire somebody for 2 hours once a week. Start there and spend that 2 hours on your highest value task. If you'll do that, it won't be very many weeks before you can outsource somebody for the whole day.
So, by the way, that is great advice. And one of the things I did when I was starting, I wasn't at that 6 and 7 figures. So what I did is negotiated with them. I found the person I wanted to work with. I got their prices and I'm like, well, hey, for instance, the podcasts are very expensive getting off the ground. And I'm like, this is new. I don't even know if it's going to do very well. And I haven't worked with you yet, but I can pay you this. And they took on that job and it grew to over 100,000 downloads in less than a year. So it works. And by the way, I negotiate with them every 3 months. If I'm making more and doing more, they make more and do more. And they were
great.
pleased to grow with me. So those are some options that you can do too. If you want to work with someone, tell them I'm new at this. This is brand new for me. Let's work together and we can renegotiate in 90 days. If I'm making more, happy to pay you more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this is a thinking pattern. This is a strategic way of thinking. One way of thinking says, the more I do, the more I get done. But as we looked at, that just causes you to have more things to do and less time to get them done. It's a way of thinking that has the brain looking for things to do, and doing a task doesn't address the reason it had to be done. So you'll be on the hook doing it again tomorrow. There's another way of thinking that says, because there's more here than I have time to get done, I don't have time to do it. So what is the best system to use? What's the best order to do it in? What's the most efficient way to get it done? Who is the right person to do it? What's the best way to train them? How do they feel about doing this? Because there's no limit on the systems you can have in your life and the people you can have in your life. This is just simply another way of thinking about making a difference in the world.
Well, Jarrod, I could literally have you on every day because you have so much great information. Where can people connect with you?
Hit me up at mindsetperformance.co. Of course, that will also take you to the socials if you're interested in connecting there. If you want to learn more about the thinking patterns of success and what they look like on paper and how we measure them and how you could learn to think that way too, so you've got more free time and more money to enjoy it with, also available at mindsetperformance.co.
And we are definitely going to have all those links for you in the show notes. You can easily connect with Jarrod. Jarrod, thank you so much for being on the show today. I learned actually a lot from you, and I've been doing this for a lot of years. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.